Guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me, Nick, here, our 2023 preview and prediction for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Looking at this coaching staff, 18th season for Nick Saban, 189-27 record with 6 national titles under his belt, some staggering accomplishments. Tommy Rees joins the offensive coordinator position, past 6 years with Notre Dame, his alma mater as the QB coach and the offensive coordinator since 2020. And then Kevin Steele, he's going to take over for Pete Golding, who departs for Ole Miss. This is his third separate stint with the Tide. Plenty of hurdles to clear to avoid a 3-year national title drought here for Alabama. Looking at this offense, Nick, it's going to be a new-look Tide offense in multiple facets, not just because Bryce Young is in Carolina as the Panthers' #1 overall selection. We have this new addition here in Tommy Rees as offensive coordinator. Bill O'Brien, of course, was expected to go back to the NFL, and that's exactly what he did. And this was an interesting hire. Rees, a guy who played quarterback at Notre Dame, was a very good one as well, has been a coach there again the last 6 seasons. Leaves for greener pastures, Nick. That is an incredibly bold move to leave your alma mater, especially when it is Notre Dame. This is a guy that's going to implement a lot of 12 personnel, some RPOs, check down screens, plenty of concepts to get vertical. Those certainly do exist. This is a bit of a 2-back pro system, and I think you're going to see Alabama get back to old school Crimson Tide football where they would just used to run up, they line up in I formation, just run downhill. I think you're going to see that, but you're also going to see a high-flying passing attack as well, because Alabama, the conversion of college football the past couple of years to these more, explosive passing attacks with, a lot of space and whatnot. Alabama adapted that perfectly, and I think they're going to look to get a little bit of both involved. What are your thoughts on Tommy Rees before we talk about this 3-man quarterback battle?
I absolutely love the hire of Tommy Rees. As an Alabama fan, I think it's important to get back to what they were doing on offense in the previous, which was running the ball a lot. Last year, 195 yards per game with Jahmyr Gibbs leading the load. I think they want to get that number higher. 30th in the nation in rush yards per game is not a bad total to be at, but I certainly would like to see that number get higher. I think they should clear 200 this year easily in rush yards per game. I think it's very key. Tommy Rees, I think this is a huge hire. Notre Dame, it's not like it's some small school that is your alma mater. This is a incredible school that Tommy Rees is coaching at. He played quarterback there. They expect him to be there for a very long time. He ends up jumping ship to Alabama, and I love the hire. I think it's a fantastic home run hire for Alabama here. They get a young coordinator who's going to put in a pro-style offense that fits with the players they have around him. I think this is a very good Crimson Tide offense, and I think this is going to be a solid piece to coach them and lead this offense to a new era. I think Bill O'Brien just was not really fit for the college game. You bring in someone who has experience coaching the college game, I think it's going to work out very well.
Tommy Rees departs. Sam Hartman also transferred in at South Bend. So it only made sense that Tyler Buchner would come to Tuscaloosa. And this guy had limited experience. Only 3 games a season ago. He was not very good as a passer versus Marshall in that upstate loss at home. Had some bright spots versus South Carolina in the bowl game. Plenty negatives as well. His best attribute is as a runner, though. Good physicality and size. A former lacrosse player. This is a guy that's certainly sturdy in the open field. Only 3 touchdowns and 5 picks last year in 3 games. Certainly has a lot of work to do as a passer. He understands the scheme better than anybody. And, Nick Saban even said, after the spring, he's like, we gave our guys plenty of opportunities to win, and we felt we needed to add more, potential at the quarterback position. That's not great to hear, Nick, because we certainly had some good expectations for Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson. Milroe certainly also a great runner, some exceptional speed, a big arm, a great build. This guy was a panic thrower, though, in his 2 games against Arkansas and A&M, even though he kind of sealed the deal there on the road against Arkansas with his legs, because obviously what he was able to do led to Jahmyr Gibbs having plenty of space, and they were able to close that one out in the 4th quarter when it was a 1-score game at one point. Really struggled with accuracy and confidence, though. Had a handful of turnovers, I believe, in the A&M game that made it close. Ty Simpson, the offense he played in high school was a spread option, a playmaker on his feet that allows him to be stout in the pocket. Running that offense allows you to develop good feet, quickness, football IQ, and running the football. I do like what they have at quarterback position. Obviously, they also have Dylan Longer and Eli Holston, a deep quarterback room in here at Tuscaloosa. I think Tyler Buchner, after hearing what we heard in the spring, I think he's going to come in and he's going to be the starter here.
I agree. I think Tyler Buchner is going to start in what is a very deep quarterback room in Tuscaloosa. Certainly a lot of talent across the board. I think Buchner fits in well. Obviously played under Rees at Notre Dame. He was the Gator Bowl MVP this past season. I think that's something important to note. Had a decent game in that game to win MVP against South Carolina. Yes, made a few mistakes here and there, but overall very solid game. The numbers, very limited numbers, obviously, because of the injury. 1-2 record in the 3 games, obviously including the big loss to Marshall, which was very disappointing for them. But I don't think he looked that bad against Ohio State. I really thought he had a pretty decent game. Buchner had previously been offered from Alabama out of high school, so it's sort of the connection kind of made sense when you started hearing the rumors earlier. I think Jalen Milroe is a good quarterback, but I think he's too one-dimensional with the running game. We saw the mistakes against A&M. He had 3 turnovers, 3 fumbles, which is really a disappointing thing. That game was way too close for comfort. Should not have been that close. I like the size of Milroe. Obviously, he's a bit of a freak with the size. It's fantastic. And when you look at it, it's a really interesting size that he has. But overall, I think Buckner is also a very talented quarterback waiting in the wings after playing that spread option play in high school, which could really help him develop as a quarterback.
Like you said, that running game, the last couple of years has certainly lost its touch. Numerous things with this football team and program have over the last couple of years. Certainly this running game, Jason McClellan's going to take over as the lead back, a patient runner, good long speed, nice contact balance, really embraces contact as a hard-nosed runner. I like his route running ability as well and his vision. Roydale Williams, a physical short yardage back, solid route runner in his own right. He's really going to be used as a short yardage guy, though, as he's kind of lacked efficiency elsewhere. And then Justice Hayes, an incoming 5-star, a player who's pegged as having elite balance, a guy who's known as a finisher with some quick feet, nice lateral agility, short area burst, a downhill one-cut runner. Lots of mileage, though, due to his usage in high school. Does have some good experience when catching the football also. So I think this backfield's a pretty solid one, Nick. Obviously, I think a lot of people are expecting Hayes to get involved right away. Jahmyr Gibbs being a loss here is significant for this football team. McClellan hasn't exactly really showed up in his career just yet, but I think this year is going to be the year where we see potentially 1,100 yards. And if not, though, I'm going to be incredibly disappointed.
Certainly excited for Jason McClellan. Battled injuries throughout his time in tough. So 655 yards on the ground this past season, 7 scores for him, 5.8 yards for Roydale Williams as well. That big kind of power back, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2 sort of situation. Get those big yards that you need to fight for. 250 yards on the ground, 4.5 yards per carry, and 4 scores for him. Justin Hayes coming from Buford, Georgia high school, very important high school, very powerhouse in Georgia football. They produce a lot of talent out there at Buford, so it's a nice pickup for Alabama. Grab a guy from Georgia, pull him out of state and bring him to Alabama. I certainly love when Nick Saban is able to recruit talent from Georgia, considering the kind of pull the Bulldogs have in their own state in the past. So I'm excited for him. I think he's a very talented back with a lot of great speed. And I really do like the size of him, the 200 pounds, 5'11". I think it's a really good size for him. So overall, I think these 3 running backs are very talented. I think we haven't seen as much from them so far because McClellan's been injured and Roydale Williams has not really had the chances due to his depth chart. I think 2 of them together will be a good 1-2 punch when you have a guy like Hayes in the wings who can really just be that dynamic runner and has so much different potential there.
Now, looking at the remainder of the supporting cast, they picked up C.J. Dupree from Maryland at tight end, a red zone target with nice frame and physicality, 6'5", 260. Pretty good open field pass catcher. Wasn't all that effective on his 250-plus run blocking snaps. Robbie Ozis, he's a good lead blocker from his tight end position. Kind of a versatile H-back, fullback type. Kind of a throwback player. Maybe twice or 3 times on the year. But at 6'4", 258, Robbie Ozis, he's certainly going to have some type of impact for this football team. And Amari Niblack, his position's a bit of a mystery. Not quite big enough to play in line, not quick enough to be a wide receiver, but he's physical at the catch point, competitive player, 6'4", 225. And then you look at wide receiver, vertical speed last year, certainly the lack of it, Nick, hurt this football team. Jermaine Burton was expected to come in and kind of be able to, alleviate the loss of John Mechie and Jamison Williams. Didn't really do that all well. Savvy route runner for IQ, a smooth acrobatic catch point player, not all that explosive, really struggled to separate downfield, and his concentration wasn't all that great either. So plenty of issues with Burton, who came over from Georgia. You look at Ja'Cory Brooks. He's got good concentration on the other hand, good at adjusting to the football. Tall, long frame football player, 6'2", 196. Good, strong hands, a wide catch radius. He's not very twitchy or explosive. And then you look at the next few guys in Isaiah Bond, Kendrick Law, Kobe Pratis, and Shiaz Preston. These guys are all going to be in that same range, Preston 6', 190, but the other 3, they're 5'10 or 5'11, all in that 170 to 190 range. These guys all have great speed, good yards after catch. Pratis, for example, is really good on quick screens. He has the elite change of direction. Law, this is a guy who's a top-notch athlete, who's really twitchy and has some nice ball skills, a great stop and start. And then Bond, of course, has elite speed, really good after the catch. His short yardage ability to make defenders miss. I think they're also going to incorporate him as a vertical weapon this year. In terms of name recognition, Nick, in terms of high school ranking coming out of their respective cycles, this is an incredibly deep receiving core. But Burton and Brooks are really the only known commodities at this point. I think a big year might be on the horizon for this receiving core.
Certainly it could be a big year for this receiving core. Jermaine Burton got better as the season went on. His second half of the season was quite fantastic. Had a very good Sugar Bowl against Kansas State. 677 yards for him on the season. Led the team in reception, 16.9 yards per catch, 7 scores for him. Ja'Cory Brooks We expected him to have a huge year. I think he lived up to some of those expectations. Certainly had a good year, in my opinion. 674 yards receiving, 17.3 yards per catch, and 8 scores for him. So I think those are good numbers from Ja'Cory Brooks. I think the bottom of it certainly is good too. Prentice is a very solid player. Isaiah Bond, very solid player. Kendrick Law, very solid player. All three of them. I love the speed of all three of them. There's kind of good balance there. Shaz Preston as well, another guy I'm excited about. The sort of the nice speed there, the size. He's a little bit taller than the others and got a little bit of a bigger frame. I think Shaz Preston is a very good player. And they also made some work in the portal, and they grabbed the #1 JUCO player at wide receiver, Malik Benson, a 4-star JUCO prospect, one of the highest ranked JUCO players in this cycle. They grabbed him. He played in Kansas at a junior college. He's an exciting player. I like his size at 6'1", 185. I think he's got a ton of potential coming in here. Good pickup for Nick Saban and co there. So I think this wide receiving core has a lot of potential. There's a lot of talent here, certainly.
To cap off this offense, the offensive front, 2 years ago, they were not very good one bit. This past season, they were certainly a lot better. J.C. Latham at tackle, anchors and pass pro with a good wide base. Far from a people mover versus the run, though. He's at best when moving forward in the run game with powerful, heavy hands. The lateral agility in the run game certainly struggles a good bit. Needs some patience when reach blocking. He also had 11 flags this past season, 6'6", 326. I believe he went to IMG Academy. This is a guy that has a lot of potential. He's probably going to be one of the best tackles in college football this year. Elijah Pritchett latches on and drives defenders in the run game. Aggressive mentality, quickly steps up in pass pro, a firm, wide base. He'll need to garner some experience versus the more twitchy or speed rushers in this conference. But his versatility and ability to get to the second level well, I think pencils him at the other tackle position. He's in a battle with 5-star Caden Proctor, a late flip from Iowa, #1 ranked tackle in the 23 class. A great athlete in space, nice short area burst. Pure size and strength is quite overwhelming. Good tenacity. He's a powerful player, 6'7", 330. That's crazy size for how young he is. And I think this left side anchored down with Latham next to Tyler Booker with some great strength. He's a complete bully who wins at the point of attack with a nice, well-timed punch. Great pass blocker. Wasn't all stellar against the run, but 6'5", 332. He's going to take on a bigger role this year after only playing 429 snaps last year. And then Terrence Ferguson's probably going to be replacing Javion Cohen. He has good length, blocks with an edge and authority. He's a nice finisher. He can really anchor on contact. He needs to get better pass pro himself. I'd say he's a pretty advanced run blocker, though. And then at center, Nick, you have Seth McLaughlin battling Darian Dalcourt, two seniors for the middle of this offensive front. Dalcourt started the first 4 games of the year. Kind of a mix and match there at that position. What are your thoughts on this offensive line? Certainly looking to get back to the staple of what used to be this program was a dominant front. They haven't exactly been there the past couple years.
I think this is a good offensive line. I think the right side is fantastic with Booker and Latham. I think that two of them together are a quite fantastic pair. Booker, only a sophomore, should get a ton of experience here this season. I like that a lot. I think you can move Dalcourt at left guard Ferguson for that potential role. I think the two of them can kind of battle. I think you can go either way there. I think Ferguson does have a lot of higher upside. I think Dalcourt, as a graduate senior, using his final year eligibility, the COVID year, he might play left guard. Seth McLaughlin is a good piece at center. The center position has been kind of shaky at times since Landon Dickinson left for the NFL. It's been shaky the past 2 seasons, but I think McLaughlin's a good piece there. Pritchett as well, battling with Proctor. I think Caden Proctor was a huge pickup. Flipped from Iowa late in the cycle, took him out of the state of Iowa, brought him to Alabama. Huge 5-star potential with him. Size with him is ridiculous. A fantastic piece to grab late in the cycle. 6'7", 330. I mean, come on. That size is ridiculous. So I'd love him start early on. I get a little concerned. I don't know if Nick Saban's going to start true freshman because there is a true freshman that's going to start on the other side of the ball. So Nick Saban might be a little more cautious about that. But I think Caden Proctor should start at left tackle. I like the right side a lot. I think the right side is fantastic. And I'd like to see this offensive line step up a little bit. Deal with provide those better running lanes for these new running backs.
Overall, I'm going to go with an A-. I think the run game needs some more consistency. This QB battle is not great. It's an incredibly deep realm, but you look at Clemson, for example, who doesn't have a QB room one bit, but they do have a 5-star in Cade Klubnik. I'm taking that probably 9 times out of 10 over what Alabama has right now. I'm just not very convinced that we're going to have a good passing attack because Bryce Young departs, and he was really just the heart and soul of this football team the past 2 seasons. What are your thoughts, Nick, on an A-? Is that a little too harsh? I think that's just about right.
I think A- is just about right. I would agree with you, your assessment that I'd rather have the Clemson situation where they have a 5-star in Cade Klubnik, where what you're going to get every single Saturday with him, a very talented, incredible athlete. Whereas with Alabama, you have a lot of talented players, but it kind of is just a huge battle. It's the first time we had a quarterback battle in a while in Tuscaloosa since Nick Saban oversaw the battle between Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa. That battle was a little easier to kind of figure out because you had Tua, who was a true 5-star, a real blue chip prospect. When you look at this, when you look between Buckner, Miller, and Simpson, sure, some of these guys were highly recruits coming out of high school, but none to the level that Tua Tagovailoa was. So I think, and also the two of them, when you look at it, Jalen Hurts and Tua at the time, the comparison was very easy to see that Jalen was more of a running game focused quarterback. Tua is more of a pocket passer. Of course, they both develop skills over time and kind of transition. But I think when you look at this, all three of these guys have different characteristics about them. They all kind of play different styles, and they kind of blend the styles together, especially with Buckner and Milroe. So I think it's a very interesting battle. Right now, I think Buckner has to be the starter for me. I don't think you transfer in to sit on the bench, but it certainly is a concerning thing as a Crimson Tide fan in the offseason to see that we did not have this figured out at all, and it took a very long time in the cycle to put together a quarterback room.
They probably do have the deepest offense, though, in CFB in terms of just people that can get on the field and they'll probably make some type of an impact. So I do give them credit for that. Looking on the defensive side of the ball, Kevin Steele arrives from Miami. Jim Leonard was on the open block. Doesn't appear that he got the call to run the same scheme here. But, this isn't exactly bad. Steele certainly, I think, is a bit of a placeholder maybe for a year or two. He's certainly aware of Nick Saban's goals on defense. He's been a liability on the recruiting trail, so obviously you're going to downgrade there with Golding's departure. He likes to implement a physical, mental toughness from his defense. Obviously, Nick Saban, they're going to pair him up together, who's an excellent DB coach. He runs a lot of man outside D. If the CB's more than 5 yards down, they become a zone defender, for example. So Kevin Steele's certainly aware of what Nick Saban wants to accomplish. So I think he has a nice vision that many fans probably won't agree with or see. I don't think it's that bad of a hire. Looking at the defensive line, one part of this Alabama football team, really another part is that the defensive line, since probably Quinnen Williams, has just not been good. Pete Golding never really seemed to unleash these guys, and they still seem to rank towards the top of college football every year in run defense, even though that seems to keep ticking backwards over the past couple of years because the defensive front has just not been elite like it has in the past. Jaheim Otis, an athletic, explosive player, 6'5", 316. He's dropped a lot of weight as a quick first step. Showcases great work ethic with that weight loss. He won't be a 3-down asset, but he's certainly going to be a highly impactful run defender. Justin Ogbegi was an impactful early part of the season before a neck injury last year. He was getting about 29 snaps per game. And then James Smith, good pursuit and range, explosive burst, a disruptive player who's great at getting upfield and slicing through gaps, a young guy they hope to get on the field. This defensive line, Nick, has just been a very big talking point for me the last couple of years because they used to put up 100-plus tackles for loss a year and maybe even in that 110, 115 range. And they just have not been doing that the last 4 or 5 seasons, it seems like.
It's been disappointing, certainly over the past couple of seasons. Jaheim Otis has to step up. He had 29 total tackles this past season, 2 tackles for loss and a sack. He's got to step up, put those numbers. I really, if you talk about Kevin Steele, at first I wasn't the biggest fan of this hire. As time has gone on, I've sort of liked it a little bit more. Steele's familiar with the program. This is his 3rd stint. He was Alabama's defensive coordinator for 2007, 2008. He spent time at Clemson as defensive coordinator, spent time at Auburn, LSU, and among others as defensive coordinators. He was the director of player personnel at Alabama and the linebackers coach in a different stint. So he's certainly been around Nick Saban, been around the SEC and other large programs like Clemson and Florida State in the past, so certainly has a lot of experience here. Yes, you lose that edge on the recruiting trail, but overall I think this is a step up from Pete Golding, who really struggled to get anything out of the defensive line like we've noted in the past. I need to see more of the defensive line this year. I think Otis has got to be the guy to step up. I know he's only a sophomore, but he needs to step up. I think Igbo as well, get back from that injury fully healthy. I want to see him step up. He's a very talented player that has a lot of potential.
Looking at some of these guys that will be coming off the edge, Chris Braswell, 25 snaps per game last year, 21 hurries. He has a quick first step, a natural athlete that needs a better plan when it comes to coming off the edge in terms of moves. But he has fluid hips and some good speed. They're going to pair him up with Dallas Turner, who seems lost on misdirection. He definitely needs to up his football IQ a little bit on that. Lacks explosion of his hand in the dirt. When he wins with power, he doesn't look to shed, though. I think there's certainly more negatives here than positives, but Turner's just a natural player who's really good at playing football. He doesn't have that great strength, but he does have a high motor, very quick feet, some good twitch. So he does win with a lot of speed and some of that initial quickness. You also have Keon Keeley, Yazan Pierre, 2 incoming 5-stars that should see time early. One thing that coincides with that defensive line concerns, Nick, is the departure of Kirby Smart. I know we talked about this before and how he's went to Georgia and they are top-ranked run defense every year. No one's doing anything against that defensive line. Alabama used to be like that. Smart departs and it's happening at his program. Kind of odd, isn't it?
I think it certainly is. It doesn't take a genius to connect one thing from the other. Kirby Smart leaving Alabama has certainly damaged the defensive line greatly. And you see it with the strength of the defensive line out in Athens. I think the edge rushing potential here, I think there is a lot of potential. I think Braswell is a good player. 20 tackles last year, 4 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. Dallas Turner is my favorite player on this Alabama team. I think he has so much potential. I loved him as a true freshman in the past here He played last year, didn't quite play as well as expected as sophomore. I expected a breakout season from him, but 37 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. I think is respectable numbers for a guy like him. He's a junior. Now he no longer has Will Anderson on his other side, so it's going to be him. He's going to get all the attention here. He's got to figure out a way to beat those blocks early on. I love the size there, 6'4", 242. He has a lot of eyes on him now that Will Anderson has gone on and graduated to the NFL. So I certainly think that Dallas Turner has a big opportunity here to step up again and be that guy that can really get after the quarterback and put a lot of sacks on the field.
Look at this linebacking core, Deontay Lawson. This is a player that needs to add some strength. He gets cleaned out often by one guy at times. Just awful play recognition. He has a rangy lateral player, some good acceleration. Jahad Campbell, he gets some snaps as a starter in the Sugar Bowl, 11 of them for a PFF grade of 29. So obviously he didn't do very well in his only time last year. An X5 star who's considered an elite athlete who can produce as a pass rusher, drop back into coverage. A 4.5 40, a versatile player with some great closing speed and pursuit. A traditional linebacker, IMG. He can play with his hand in the dirt. People are saying maybe he might be a Micah Parsons comparison. Justin Jefferson, a JUCO transfer, 4.4 speed, 13 TFL this past season. Alabama typically always has that dog in the middle of their defense, but if Lawson does not up his play recognition, because I thought he was just awful on tape last year, this linebacking core could really struggle because he's going to be considered the alpha dog. If he doesn't do it, they could be in trouble.
I agree. I think this linebacking core needs to find some potential here. Out of the talent they have, I think there is some talent here. Certainly work with. I think Deontay Lawson has to step up and be that guy in the middle that really dominates. I think he has a lot of potential. He's got big shoes to fill with Henry To'oTo'o leaving. I think Lawson is a good player. 51 total tackles this past season, 2.5 tackles for a loss. I think he's a good player to have in there. I think Jahad Campbell, he's going to get some snaps this year. He's going to step up and be involved. Tresman Marshall as well is a very talented player that they grabbed in the portal from Georgia. Could he be involved early on? I'd like to see that. I love the size of him, 6'1", 236. He's a good player to grab out of the portal, take from a rival anytime you can do that. That's very solid. Justin Jefferson as well, a JUCO transfer, very talented linebacker potential here. So I think there is a lot of potential as linebacking room. Big shoes to fill losing Henry To'oTo'o, but certainly I'm not worried about it.
Now look at the secondary. They performed pretty well a season ago, 17th against the pass. They're going to be led by Kool-Aid McKinstry on the outside. This is a player who tracks the ball very well, some great ball skills, mirrors quick wide receivers underneath, an instinctive corner who some people think is the top-ranked DB going into next year's draft. They're going to pair him up with Terrion Arnold. This guy has good recovery, some good length to pluck the ball away. Struggles to get his head around at times. Seems to be a willing tackle. I think this is a very sound CB duo here. Malachi Moore, where is he when? A couple years ago, this guy was the next big thing. Brian Branch ended up taking the reins, and his job ended up being a high pick in the NFL draft. Good versatility, though, from Moore. Has been in the slot nearly his entire career. Has been an inconsistent tackler, an instinctive player who's always around the ball. Strength to shed blocks or to make plays in the box has been an issue. Dwight add up to about 198 might mean he could be a full-time safety, even though the explosiveness is certainly lacking when he plays in the back end of that position. So Malachi Moore's role this year certainly is, unknown. Caleb Downs at safety. He can be a nickel back and play in the box or the center field, embraces contact. He's a smooth, instinctive student of the game, quickly arrives at the catch point. They also added Trey Amos at corner and safety Jalen Key, 2 group of 5 players that were highly graded this past year, late in the cycle. The safety position concerns me because Caleb Downs as a true freshman is likely going to have to step up here, which is not bad in the SEC. Seen Malachi Starks last year for Georgia. He had plenty of great plays for them. A handful of bad ones also, but more good than bad, I would say. And that's going to be the expectation with Downs. The safety room isn't all that eye-popping, so you're going to have to put this true freshman in there, which probably could be bad.
Certainly Nick Saban does not want to put a true freshman in. Caleb Downs is a very talented, high-level recruit, so I think that is certainly something that comforts me. Kool-Aid McKinstry, a lot of people are talking about him on social media as being the number 1 DB in all of college football this year, the number 1 going to the draft next year. I certainly could see it. I think there's so much talent with Kool-Aid McKinstry. 15 pass breakups this past season, 35 total tackles for him, 2 tackles for a loss, and a sack. I think Kool-Aid is a fantastic player, also a threat in special teams. I love having him on your defense. Terrion Arnold got better as the season went on. I think he improved, looked good at A&M at the end of the game, had the pass breakup that saved the game against A&M, looked good throughout the bottom 6 games in the season. He had 45 total tackles plus 8 pass breakups. Malachi Moore, been very disappointed. He broke out a little bit during the national championship winning season in 2020 and has disappeared. We've not seen him. We don't know where he went. We don't know what the story of him is. If he can step up and be that big X factor, that is a huge boost for this defense. If he can find a way to stay on the field and be the star that we know he is, that'd be fantastic. I love the Jalen Key ad. I think it's a fantastic piece. He had 41 tackles last year, solo tackles last year for UAB, 3 interceptions as well. and 2 forced fumbles. Very versatile player at safety, 6'2", 210. I like him a lot. And then Trey Amos as well, coming over from Louisiana. They coach a pretty good secondary out there with Louisiana, so I think that's a solid pickup in the portal as well.
The biggest things need to improve here: more dominance from the D-line. They need to be better versus the run and some more ball production. They only had a handful of interceptions. The truth of the matter is this team allowed 180-plus rushing yards in 5 of the last 7 games. One of the 2 that they didn't was against an FCS opponent, so that really doesn't even count. They give up 300-plus rushing to Auburn. This team's run defense has certainly went downhill, and I was critical of them in 2021. They must have heard me because they performed a lot better towards the end of the year. They're just not there, Nick. I'm going with a B+ just because the expectation is a lot higher. I'm certainly being pretty harsh for a team that ranks 9th, 13th, 17th, and then 35th in respective defensive categories. But this is not a debate. This defense needs to be a lot better. They're doing it up in Athens. They're certainly nowhere near where they used to be. Only 7 interceptions. And again, they were not very good against the run last year. This defense mightily disappointed me last year. I'm going with a B+. I don't think that's harsh at all. I think it's right on point. They just need to be better.
I agree. The numbers tell a different story than what you actually see on the field. I couldn't believe this team was 9th in points per game last year. It just shocked me when I saw it, considering what happened against Tennessee and other teams in the SEC, where it seemed like they were in a shootout with them. I think 18.2 points per game is a fantastic number, but the rest of it, I think I want to see better numbers out of it. 130 yards per game on the ground is not good for Alabama. You need to see a better number there. 35th, you need to see that number get higher. The rushing defense has been poor the past season. It has to step up. I think A-, B+ is the range. I think certainly closer to a B+ than an A-. There's a lot of talent on this defense, a lot of raw talent. Kevin Steele's gonna have to find a way to get the talent out of these guys and get them to produce, unlike Pete Golding was able to. Otherwise, this defense could be in the same kind of situation they have been the last couple seasons.
Looking at the schedule preview and prediction, the Tide have an uncertain QB battle for the first time in a while, but a more balanced scheme approach, implemented by Tommy Rees. You get Bama back to its old ways behind a terrific O-line. The wide receiver group is incredibly deep in terms of talent, but this unit must live up to some expectations. The Tide front 7 seems to have fallen a step behind, but faith has never wavered under Staben, and talent is still high as ever, while the secondary had some new faces in hopes of improved ball production. The Tide have disappointed for 2 straight years, but still field a top roster nationally with some great upside that will once again make them the number 1 team in the country. I picked this team to win the national title 2 years in a row, and it seems week by week I'm holding my breath because they cannot seem to beat opponents by more than just a couple of points. This is just a team that's certainly not been the same the last 2 years, Nick, despite having 2 Heisman finalists or 2 Heisman-like players the last 2 years. Those guys are now gone, the leadership and the production and the overall playmaking. I'm going 11-1 though. Regardless, I do have them losing on the road to A&M. I don't exactly believe that they will lose to the Aggies, but they've certainly given them a scare the last 2 years. So, and this team's not proven to me over the last couple of years that they can go win a road game like that. So why not pick them to lose that? Again, pick them to win the Natty 2 years in a row. Don't have them in the playoffs this year just because I've been incredibly disappointed with them, and they don't have Bryce Young under center anymore. 11 games for me. Obviously, they're going to be tough to beat week in, week out. And if they do represent the West, they're going to give Georgia a headache in a tough game. Should be fun all year round to watch the Tide, but I'm just going to stay away from the playoffs this year.
As an Alabama fan, I won't make prediction. I certainly think it's been disappointing the past 2 seasons that Alabama has not won a national championship. Nick Saban's getting that itch again. He wants to win another national championship. He wants to continue to add to his legacy. He is the greatest coach of all time in college football. He's won 6 national championships at Alabama, 7 total. He wants to get 1 more. He wants to get to that 8 number. I think that's exactly where he wants to be to continue to cement his legacy. He has more than Bear Bryant did at Alabama. He certainly has the pedigree, and he wants to continue winning despite his age, pushing 70 at this point. He still wants to win every single season. The schedule is not necessarily tough by any stretch of imagination. It's a typical SEC West schedule. Hosting Texas is very interesting. Some people are saying Texas could win that game on September 9th. I think it's a very interesting discussion. The road trips, at Kentucky in late November is kind of an odd one, bit of a different kind of thing for this Alabama team. You don't really see trips like that late in the season to a cold weather climate on the road. So I certainly think that's interesting. At Auburn, always trouble at Jordan-Hare under Hugh Freeze. Certainly Auburn has a new life in them. They've lit a fire under them. That's a tough place to play at Jordan-Hare. Alabama has struggled there. Won an OT 2 years ago, lost the 2 years before that, lost 2 years before that, right? So they have not played well the last 3 trips to Jordan-Hare. It's a tough place to play, so certainly circle that one on your calendar. At home to LSU, they should be fine. At home to Tennessee, they should be fine, even though Tennessee certainly has a lot of talent as well this season. Alabama, excited for this season. I think they're continuing to produce talent, and it's a very deep team. I certainly get concerned about some of the small minor details. I think the coaching, it's nice to see some coaching changes here, but overall, Alabama fans, they're going to be a little nervous this year coming into the season, but I think if any team can go out and just run the table and be able to dominate week in, week out, why not Alabama? They certainly have the pedigree to do so.
Yeah, I like this schedule. We're accustomed to seeing some of these SEC teams at times having just poor schedules. They don't play until week 7 or week 8, and they're just pretty much a cakewalk to Atlanta. I think this one's pretty tough. I see at least maybe 5 or 6 teams on here that'll be ranked come the end of the year. So I think this is a nice schedule to kind of see what this team's made of. I'm gonna stay again. I'm gonna stay away from the playoffs, but I definitely would not be shocked if they go 15-0. Would love to see that. I love the competition in the SEC. I love the rivalry between Alabama and Georgia. That being said, it's gonna be it for today's episode. As always, Nick, I appreciate you joining me breaking down the Tide.
Always a pleasure to talk about my alma mater. I'm excited for Alabama football this year. Count down the days, 57 days away from kickoff for Alabama. This is a very talented team. I'm very excited. Nick Saban wants to win. I think a lot of Alabama fans want to win another title. They want to be able to knock off Georgia, who's gone back to back, and they want to put to bed that conversation that Georgia's the new kings of college football. I think Alabama still are the kings of college football, and they certainly have a chance here to show that by getting another national championship.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.